Hello. So I'm so happy to be speaking to you today at your social summit. My name is Jen Moore, and I am a renal dietitian, also a certified plant-based dietitian. So Megan gave me a wonderful introduction. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen, and I am going to start the deck. So what I want to talk to you today about is more plants. And I really want to speak to the entire kind of spectrum of kidney disease. So most of the time I teach this when we're talking about prevention of progression of chronic kidney disease, but we're going to talk all the way through to dialysis patients so that I include each of you. So what we want to talk about today is two reasons why plants are healthy for all people living with kidney disease, ways to maintain a healthy gut, which actually you may think, why are you talking to me about my gut when my focus is kidney disease, but you'll see why. And then also listing causes of high potassium other than diet, because a lot of times people with kidney disease avoid plants because they think they're high in potassium. So plants, we all need them. Everyone needs them. If you're on dialysis, if you're not on dialysis, it should be the mainstay of everyone's diet. Everyone's diet should be focused in on plants. And so we're going to talk about several reasons why. And the first one, with particular attention to kidney disease, is in the area of inflammation. So this is something that every person living with kidney disease in any stage of the disease would want to lower. And why is that? So when we talk about inflammation, we're talking about something called oxidation. So for chronic kidney disease, anybody, a pre-end stage or a dialysis patient, has this persistent low-grade inflammation. What do I mean by that? Well, this apple will help you understand that. So if you look at an apple, when you slice an apple, it begins to turn brown, right? And so this is oxidation, or it could be seen as inflammation. So it turns brown because of the oxygen that's getting to the flesh of that apple. So this is similar to what happens with a CKD patient body over time. So over time, oxidation or internal, think of it as like internal browning or oxidation in your body goes on. And this can be as a result of anything. Obviously, you're going to have more toxins in your body if your kidneys are not working properly, but even like environmental toxins or even exercise causes oxidation. So there's a lot of things in our lives that cause oxidation for people with kidney disease or that don't have kidney disease. We all have this oxidative stress. But the problem is for kidney disease, it can do things like lower albumin levels or increased risk of cardiovascular disease, things that we don't want. Now, if we go back to the apple example and we take a lemon and we squeeze the juice on the apple, you'll see that it stops the browning process. And that's because within lemon juice, there's a very potent antioxidant called vitamin C. So you heard me say the term antioxidant. So that is what we need to slow inflammation or oxidation in the body. So this is kind of what it looks like. In everybody's body, we have these healthy atoms, and then we have something called a free radical or an oxidant. And what we need is our friendly antioxidant to give an electron to this oxidant that's not stable in our bodies to stop the browning process. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of antioxidants. So where do antioxidants come from? Well, they come from fruits and vegetables, and that's why we need to have these in our diet. That's why we need more plants. Okay, another reason is acid-base balance. So one of the main functions of the kidneys is acid-base balance. So what happens when we have unwanted acidosis? So, which we don't want pre-end stage, but we really don't want it in dialysis either. Now, I know in dialysis, when you're on the machine, we give bicarbonate or we manage the acidosis with the dialysis machine. But here's one thing I want you to think about. We also manage potassium. We also manage phosphorus with the dialysis machine. However, you still watch potassium and phosphorus in your diet, right? And so I think it's helpful to watch acidosis across the board, both pre-end stage and with dialysis. And so why is that? Well, acidosis contributes to things like muscle wasting. We don't want that. You want to maintain muscle mass, both pre-end stage and on dialysis. One thing about dialysis is that you're sitting for long periods of time, and we know that that can contribute to muscle wasting. And now there's destruction of bone and bone disease. We know that kidney disease already contributes to bone disease, so we don't want to contribute to that any further. Low albumin levels, we've already talked about inflammation, but we also can see that when we get into an acidotic state, we get more acid in our body. Increased rates of progression of chronic kidney disease. So if you're not on dialysis yet, we certainly don't want acidosis, because we want to slow the progression of chronic kidney disease. Stimulation of inflammation. We just talked about we don't want inflammation. So if we do have acidosis going on in the body, we definitely don't want to do that, because we don't want to make more inflammation. And then especially for diabetics, impaired insulin secretion and sensitivity. So if you look at plants and acidosis, plants are naturally very alkalizing, meaning, remember, you've got acid base balance, so you've got acid and you've got alkaline. Well, plants are naturally alkaline. And so what we want to do is keep the acid production down and alkaline high. And fruits and vegetables also have the lowest net acid production in the body. And so there's something called potential renal acid load. And that just shows how much acid a food would contribute to your diet or to your body. So, and it's not necessarily what the food is outside of the body, but what it is once you take it in and begin to digest it. And so you'll see here the potential renal acid load. You'll see fruits and vegetables is much lower than things like animal products. Now, if you're pre-end stage, I would encourage you to stay away from animal products as much as possible. Try to eat more of a plant-based diet, and you may need to get with a dietitian to help you do that. If you're on dialysis, I know a lot of times it's really hard to keep protein levels up. And so with that, maybe you could work with your dietitian to have him or her teach you how to just include more plants in your diet. But there was an interesting study done. This is pretty interesting, in 2012, where they took pre-end stage patients and they put them either on a sodium bicarbonate supplement, so kind of an alkalizing supplement, or they just increased the number of fruits and vegetables in the patient's diet. And what they found was that both treatments lowered the acid levels, but those who were eating the fruits and vegetables not only had a lower acid level, but lower indicators of kidney injury were also less. So we definitely want to up the fruits and vegetables to lower the acid load. Now, one other thing that I think people forget, especially once they're on dialysis, just because you're on dialysis and you're on a special diet does not mean that you don't need nutrients. So when I was working in the dialysis centers, a lot of my patients ate very nutrient void food. So a lot of like packaged processed foods, not very many fruits and vegetables. And I really began to change the way that I talked with patients, because I wanted them to get more nutrients in your body, because even if your kidneys have failed already, you still have other organs that need nutrients. Even and if your kidneys are failing, or if you've got kidney damage, you still need other nutrients. One, to preserve the function that you've got, but also just to preserve the health of your body. So everybody needs nutrients, including kidney patients. So I want you to think of yourself as not just someone on dialysis, but I still have a body that I want to take care of, and I want to feed nutritious foods. And so when we talk about nutrition, I know you've probably heard of like macronutrients, especially like in the weight loss area, macros and micros. So macronutrients are things like carbohydrate, protein, and fat. That's all you have to remember about macronutrients. Micronutrients, there's a lot more of those: vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytochemicals. But the thing is, if you look at a lot of the foods people eat, say for instance, chicken has protein, has a lot of macronutrients, but it doesn't have a lot of micronutrients. It's missing those vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. A bagel has a lot of macronutrients, carbohydrate, but it's missing a lot of the micronutrients. But if you look over, here's one way you'll know something's really rich in micronutrients is if it's got a lot of color. So look at the picture on the right, like all the fruits and vegetables and the color that you can include in your diet. And so this is where you get the micronutrients. And these are the things that helps your body fight off infection, fight off disease. It just gives your body strength. That just builds your body up. So we want to include more micronutrients in the diet. Now, a lot of times people say, well, I can't eat all those fruits and vegetables because I have to watch my potassium and my phosphorus. But I'm going to dispel that for you a little bit, because plants are still okay. Now, you may have to figure out which plants are okay for you, but there are plants that are still okay. And if you're working with a dietitian, they can certainly help you do that. But so what about phosphorus? Well, here's one thing you need to know is that plant-based phosphorus is much less bioavailable than particularly processed food. So I bet your dietitian has talked to you about how processed food has phosphorus that's almost 100% absorbable. What do I mean by processed food? Anything in a package, and it's hard to read a label and know if there's phosphorus in that packaged food because it doesn't necessarily have to be listed in the label. It will be in the list of ingredients. So if you read the list of ingredients and it says something like dicalcium phosphate, anything that sounds like phosphorus in the list of ingredients, it probably has a lot of it in there, and it's very, very bioavailable. Your body will absorb a lot of that. But you also need to know that flesh food, animal products, that phosphorus is much more bioavailable. Why is that? Well, plant-based phosphorus is in the form of something called phytate, and our bodies can't absorb that. But flesh phosphorus is not in that form, and so your body can absorb that. Another problem that you have to look at is if the meat you're eating is injected with phosphorus additives, because that is becoming very, very common. And so you'll have to read the label now, even on animal-based foods, which we didn't used to have to do, but they are injecting meat with phosphorus additives now. So that's another challenge for kidney patients, as if you didn't have enough challenges as it is. Another thing now this is really for the pre-ESRD population more so than dialysis, although it does affect you as well. But there's something called FGF23. You'll never see this on a lab report. They don't really draw it, but we know that it's going up in the background as kidneys fail. And the problem with this is as that goes up, so does your risk of heart problems, heart disease, and also increased rate of progression to kidney failure. And we want to slow progression. So FGF23 is it will cause your body to urinate out more phosphorus if you're pre-end stage. So that's why a lot of times your phosphorus is still normal, but your FGF23 may still be high, even though you won't see it. And so you do want to keep your phosphorus intake down. And the way to do that, especially pre-end stage, is to eat plant-based foods, because you're not going to absorb that phosphorus as well. Now, what about potassium? Okay, so this is the one watch out, because sometimes potassium can go high. Now, I will say most of the time, if it goes high, it's not diet related, even though a lot of the literature still says it is. More research is coming out lately that shows it's not diet related, but you do have to be careful with this, especially if you're on dialysis for sure. If you're late stage, pre-end stage, so let's say you're stage 4 or 5, you do need to watch out for a potassium. But you need to remember that even animal-based food has potassium. So that's what I'm showing you here. It's a comparison. Say, for instance, chicken has 332 milligrams of potassium for about 3 ounces, which is much less than most people eat. And then you can go over here and look at like a half a cup of beans would have about the same amount. So you can still have plant-based foods. They're not automatically ruled out because animal-based foods have potassium too. The great thing about plant-based foods is that there is a higher fiber content in plant-based foods. And so a lot of that potassium you won't absorb because it's caught in the fiber cell and it'll go out in your stool. So just keep that in mind. There are also a lot of non-nutritional causes of hyperkalemia, of high potassium. So some of those would be like acidosis, which we just talked about. Well, plants help with acidosis, so that's a good thing. High blood sugar medications is a big one, particularly your blood pressure medications. You can ask your physician if your medications raise potassium, so you'll know to be more careful. Other things like sickle cell anemia, I won't read all of these. Constipation can increase potassium levels. So these are just things to keep in mind, that there are other things that can cause high potassium besides your diet. Okay, now we're on to the gut. So plants, gut, and kidneys. Why do I care about gut health? Well, this is becoming something that really everyone should care about, gut health, because they're actually saying, so in our gut, I'll just go ahead and go to the next slide. In our gut, we have something called a microbiome. And what that means is that there are certain little bacteria, microscopic little bugs that we can't see in our gut, and we want those to be healthy. They're even saying that our gut microbiome is almost like a whole other organ. But there are different, like I said, there are different microbes that live in there. And what influences the microbes that are in your gut is what you eat. So you want to feed the healthy microbes and not feed the unhealthy microbes, because you don't want those in there. But this is a new area of research. And so we have a lot to learn, but we do know a good bit. And there is one thing that can be created by your gut microbiome that we definitely don't want, particularly if you're a pre-end stage kidney patient. So there's something called trimethylamine N oxide, TMAO. So you don't even have to remember that, but you just want to know that you don't want this in your gut. What is it? Well, the body creates this TMAO. The gut microbes will create this TMAO post-consumption of animal products. And so the choline and the carnitine that are really high in animal products, particularly things like meat and eggs and cheese, that will, because of the choline and the carnitine, the gut microbes will take that and make this TMAO. The problem with TMAO is that it is a kidney toxin, so it will increase the rate of progression to kidney failure, but it's also bad for your heart and your arteries and your veins. So we want to keep this down. We don't want a lot of TMAO. So how do you do that? Well, you eat more plants. So the best thing in the world you can do, whether you are on dialysis or a pre-end stage patient, is eat a variety of plants. This guy, I really love him. His name is Will Bulshwicks. He tells everyone to call him Dr. B, but he says the greatest predictor of a healthy gut microbiome is the diversity of plants in one's diet. So if you're pre-end stage, particularly stage 1 through 3, you can really maximize on this. Eat a lot of different varieties of plants across a week. So eat different greens, eat all different types of fruits. It can even vary across like a green apple versus a red apple, or all different types of, you can even eat like beans and beets, any kind of vegetable. The variety is huge. So try to expand the variety of fruits and vegetables in your diet. If you're on dialysis, ask your dietitian, can you help me expand the variety of plants in my diet, because I want to have a healthy gut. And she'll probably think you're really smart if you say that. So I would encourage you to do that. Just try to look at fruits and vegetables that are acceptable whatever stage of kidney disease you're in, and try to maximize the variety of that as much as possible. And then you'll be healthier, not only if you're pre-end stage your kidneys, but your whole body at any stage of kidney disease, because it helps your heart, it helps your lungs. You still have other organs, your skin, all of these things you have that you want to preserve and keep as healthy as possible, because you are fantastic and you are a special person. And you have a whole body. So I want you to think of yourself, not just, I know you focus in on the kidneys because maybe that's what you're struggling with the most, but think of your entire body and think of how to be healthier overall, because you're worth it. And so that's where I am. You're a whole person. You're not just your kidneys. So take care of yourself. More plants are better for everyone. And so I hope you'll try to include more plants in your diet, talk with your dietitian, learn more, go to the grocery store, try something you've never tried before, try a fruit or a vegetable you've never tried before. Make sure it's okay if you're on dialysis with your current plan that you have with your dietitian there, and yeah, and just work to incorporate more plants in your diet. So anyway, I hope this has been informational and educational for you. I hope you have a wonderful social summit. I hope you learn a lot, and I appreciate y'all letting me be here with you today. Thank you very much. Goodbye.